Fighter pilot is an attitude. It is cockiness. It is aggressiveness. It is self-confidence. It is a streak of rebelliousness, and it is competitiveness. But there's something else. There's a spark. There's a desire to be good, to do well in the eyes of your peers and in your own mind. Robin Olds. Alright, today we're covering introduction and airplane instruments. Here's the battle plan. We're going to start off with introductions. We'll do an overview of the course. We'll talk about how to prepare for the test. We'll get into airplanes and aerodynamics. We'll do a quiz and assign some homework. This is how I like to run my lessons. We start off with the tasks, conditions, and standards, basically what we're going to be covering for the day. We get into emergency procedures. We do a student report of the day, like a plane of the day, a subsystem deep dive, or a topic deep dive. We get into the ground school topic of the day, and we do a debrief, 5-minute recap from memory, and then a multiple choice quiz to emulate the FAA written exam. The private pilot certificate is a lot like your driver's license. You can carry passengers and baggage, but you can't do it for hire. You can also get a recreational pilot certificate. It is upgradable to a private pilot certificate, but there are some restrictions. Let's talk about studying for the exam. First and foremost, you should go in knowing your stuff. Be a subject matter expert on the topics. You should be constantly testing yourself, basically doing a short quiz every single day to make sure that you are ready for the exam. You should go back and review any missed questions and turn your weaknesses into your strengths. And at the end of every lesson, you should do an active recall session where you put aside your notes and you write down from memory everything you can remember from the lesson. Let's talk about some requirements for certification and recent experience. First of all, you must be 17 years old to get your private pilot certificate. You have to have a working knowledge of the English language, so read, speak, and write the English language. You must receive a logbook endorsement from your instructor saying that you're ready for the exam. You need to meet the aeronautical experience requirements, pass a practical test, and hold one of these certificates. To be a pilot in command and to carry passengers in the day, you must log 3 takeoffs and landings within the preceding 90 days, and if you're flying a tailwheel aircraft, those 3 takeoffs and landings must be to a full stop. If you want to carry passengers at night, you must also do 3 takeoffs and landings at night to a full stop. To act as a pilot in command, you must go back and receive a biennial flight review every 24 calendar months. This consists of 1 hour of flight and 1 hour of ground training to make sure that you are staying up to date with all the rules and regulations and anything new in the aviation community. Another way to meet this requirement is to get a new rating. You can get your instrument rating or commercial rating, and this essentially resets your 24 calendar clock. Another way of completing the 2-year flight review is to complete a level of the FAA Wings program. This consists of a few ground modules. Then you go up with an instructor to do the flight portion, and then you get a set of wings like these. The first few lessons are going to cover airplanes and aerodynamics. We'll talk about flight controls, aerodynamic forces, angle of attack, stalls and spins, frost, ground effect, airplane turns, torque and P factor, load factor, and velocity versus G. Let's get into the flight controls. Here are the basics. On the tail of the aircraft, we have the vertical stabilizer. We also have the horizontal stabilizer. You can tell which is which because the vertical stabilizer is vertical and the horizontal stabilizer is horizontal. And this big guy here is called the wing. Our aircraft is a 3-dimensional vehicle. The 3 axes that we rotate about are the lateral axis going from wingtip to wingtip, the longitudinal axis going from nose to tail, and the easy one, the vertical axis. Let's review. Name all 3. What's number 1? That's the vertical stabilizer. Number 2 is the horizontal stabilizer. And number 3 is the wing. All right. And what are the 3 axes of our aircraft? Wingtip to wingtip, that's the lateral axis. Nose to tail, the longitudinal axis, and from floor to ceiling, that's the vertical axis. Now let's talk about how we move about those axes. To pitch about the lateral axis, we pull back or push forward on the stick, and this actuates the elevator. This pitches us about the lateral axis. We roll about the longitudinal axis by deflecting our stick left and right. This actuates these ailerons, and they roll us about the longitudinal axis. Our feet press against the rudder pedals, and this actuates the rudder, and this yaws us about the vertical axis. These are the secondary flight controls, the flaps, and the trim tab. Some aircraft have spoilers, but spoiler alert, we don't in the 172. What are the 3 primary flight controls? We pitch about the lateral axis using the elevator. We roll about the longitudinal axis using the aileron. And we yaw about the vertical axis using the rudder. Nice. Let's talk about the purpose of the trim tab. The trim tab is used to counteract aerodynamic forces on the elevator. This relieves the pilot's workload during continuous maneuvers, and it allows for hands-off flight. Remember, pitch, power, and trim. We set our pitch using our stick, we set the power using the throttle, and then we trim off control pressures to fly hands off. What are the secondary flight controls? These panels on the inboard side of the wing are the flaps, and over here on the tail, that's the trim tab. And which one do we not have in the 172? The spoilers, that's right. What is the purpose of the trim tab? The trim tab is used to counteract aerodynamic forces on the elevator. This relieves the pilot's workload during continuous maneuvers, and it allows for hands-off flight. This is the trim wheel. This actuates the trim tab, and it functions a lot like the stick. We roll forward to nose down, and we roll aft for nose up. So in your own words, what does this do, and how does it work? That actuates the trim tab. It functions like the stick, forward for nose down, aft for nose up. These are the four forces of flight: lift, thrust, drag, and weight. Remember that unaccelerated level flight is achieved when the four forces are in equilibrium. Bernoulli's principle states that the internal pressure of a fluid decreases at points where the speed of the fluid increases. So as fluid moves through this pipe, it has a certain velocity and pressure. When it is squeezed into this venturi here, the velocity increases and the pressure drops. And then once it passes the venturi, it goes back to its standard velocity and pressure. We can imagine this portion here as the top of our wing. And let's watch this video here. So as air flows over the wing, you can see the upper portion of the wing, the air moves faster, and that creates an area of low pressure over the wing and a higher pressure under the wing. And that causes lift. So what are the four forces of flight? Lift, thrust, drag, and weight. And unaccelerated level flight is achieved when? When the four forces are in equilibrium. The angle of attack is the angle between the wing chord line and the direction of the wind. The angle of attack at which a wing stalls remains constant, regardless of weight or loading. So this angle right here is the angle of attack. An airplane can stall at any airspeed and in any flight attitude. It's all about exceeding that critical angle of attack. An airplane spins when one wing is less stalled than the other, and to spin, an airplane must be stalled. So the angle between the wing chord line and the direction of the wind is called the angle of attack. How do you stall a wing? You exceed the critical angle of attack. To spin, an airplane must be stalled. That's right. All right, let's take 5 minutes now, pause the video, and jot down as much as you can remember from the lesson. And then we'll get into our quiz. Ready? Pause. Let's do our quiz. What is one purpose of flaps? To enable the pilot to make steeper approaches to a landing without increasing airspeed. What is the purpose of the rudder on an airplane? To control yaw. Which is not a primary flight control? The flaps. The elevator controls movement around which axis? The lateral axis. Which statement relates to Bernoulli's principle? Air traveling faster over the curved upper surface of an airfoil causes lower pressure on the top surface. All right, here's your homework. Read and report on adverse yaw, Chapter 3 in the Airplane Flying Handbook. You should read the Airplane Flying Handbook, Chapters 1 through 3, and the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, and test yourself. Do at least 5 questions a day. You can review this video or check out King School's free FAA exam. I'll put the link in the lesson here. And I would love to hear your feedback. What do you think of this first lesson? What would you like to see in the future? Do you have any questions, comments, or concerns for me? You can use the chat function in the website chat dealio, to send me a message directly or talk to me on Discord. Oh, and here are my references. Thanks for watching. See ya.